tow plane, using a short rope for the high-towed glider and a long rope for the low-tow. The current record is 9 gliders in the same aerotow. 34. Winch launching. A DG-1000 being winch launched. Gliders are often launched using a stationary ground-based winch mounted on a heavy vehicle. 31. This method is widely used at many European clubs, often in addition to an aerotow service. The engine is usually powered by LPG, petrol or diesel, though hydraulic fluid engines and electrical motors are also used. The winch pulls in a 1,000 to 2,500 meter, 3,000 to 7,500 feet, cable, made of high tensile steel wire or a synthetic fiber, attached to the glider. The cable is released at a height of about 35% of the cable length after a short, steep ride. 31. 78. A strong headwind will result in high launches. Winch launches are much cheaper than aerotows and permit a high launch frequency. A winch may also be used at sites where an aerotow could not operate, because of the shape of the field or because of noise restrictions. The height gained from a winch is usually less than that from a typical winch on aerotow, so pilots need to find a source of lift soon after releasing from the cable, or else the flight will be short. A break in the cable at the weak link. Note 1. During a winch launch is a possibility for which pilots are trained. 31. 87. 35. 16.7. Autotow. Another method of launching, the autotow, is rarer nowadays. 31. The direct autotow requires a hard surface and a powerful vehicle that is attached to the glider by a long steel cable. After gently taking up slack in the cable, the driver accelerates hard and as a result the glider rises rapidly to about 400 meters, 1,300 feet, especially if there is a good headwind and a runway of 1.5 kilometers, 0.93 mi, or more. This method has also been used on desert dry lakes. 36. A variation on the direct autotow is known as the reverse pulley method. In this method, the truck drives towards the glider being launched. The cable passes around a pulley at the far end of the airfield, resulting in an effect similar to that of a winch launch. 31. Bungee launch. A bungee launch at the Long MYNDBY. The Midland Gliding Club. Bungee launching was widely used in the early days of gliding, and occasionally gliders are still launched from the top of a gently sloping hill into a strong breeze using a substantial multi-stranded rubber band, or bungee. 37. For this launch method, the glider's main wheel rests in a small concrete trough. The hook normally used for winch launching is instead attached to the middle of the bungee. Each end is then pulled by 3 or 4 people. One group runs slightly to the left, the other to the right. Once the tension in the bungee is high enough, the glider is released and the glider's wheel pops out of the trough. The glider gains just enough energy to leave the ground and fly away from the hill. 37. Gravity launch. A glider can simply be pushed down a slope until gravity can create enough speed for it to take off. 38. Cross-country. Glider on a cross-country flight. In Theopson of the measures of a glider's performance is the distance that it can fly for each meter it descends, known as its glide ratio. Glider ratio is dependent on an aircraft's class, and can typically range from 44:1, for modern designs in the standard class, up to 71, for the largest aircraft. A good gliding performance combined with regular sources of rising air enables modern gliders to fly long distances at high speeds. 22. 39. The weather is a major factor in determining cross-country speeds. The record average speed for 1,000 kilometers, 620 mi, is 203.1 kilometers per hour, 126.2 miles per hour, 26, and required unusually good conditions, but even In places with less favorable conditions, such as Northern Europe, a skilled pilot can expect to complete flights over 500 kilometers, 310 mi, every year. 40. As the performance of gliders improved in the 1960s, the concept of flying as far away as possible became popular with the crews who had to retrieve the gliders. Pilots now usually plan to fly around a course, called a task, via turn points, returning to the starting point. 41. 133. In addition to just trying to fly further, glider pilots also race each other in competitions. 42. The winner is fastest, or, if the weather conditions are poor, the furthest round the course. Tasks of up to 1000 km have been set. 43. And average speeds of 120 km per hour are not unusual. 44. Initially, ground observers confirmed that pilots had rounded the turn points. Later, the glider pilots photographed these places and submitted the film for verification. Today, gliders carry secure GNSS flight recorders that record the position every few seconds from GPS satellites. 45. These recording devices now provide the proof that the turn points have been reached. 46. Competition grid at Lasham Airfield. In 2009, national competitions generally last 1 week, with international championships running over 2. The winner is the pilot who has amassed the greatest number of points over all the contest days. However, these competitions have as yet failed to draw much interest outside the gliding community for several reasons. Because it would be safe for many gliders to cross a start line at the same time, pilots can choose their own start time. 47. Furthermore, gliders are not visible to spectators for long periods during each day's contest, and their scoring is complex, so traditional gliding competitions are difficult to televise. In an attempt to widen the sport's appeal, a new format, the Grand Prix, has been introduced. 48. Innovations introduced in the Grand Prix format include simultaneous starts for a small number of gliders, cockpit-mounted cameras, telemetry giving the positions of the gliders, tasks consisting of multiple circuits, and simplified scoring. There is a decentralized internet-based competition called the Online Contest, in which pilots upload their GPS data files and are automatically scored based on distance flown. Worldwide, 6,703 pilots registered for this contest in 2010. 40. Maximizing average speed. Soaring pioneer Paul McCready is usually credited with developing mathematical principles for optimizing the speed at which to fly when cross-country soaring. 49. 1110. Although it was first described by Wolfgang Spate in 1938. 50. The speed-to-fly theory allows the optimal cruising speed between thermals to be computed, using thermal strength, glider performance and other variables. It accounts for the fact that if a pilot flies faster between thermals, the next thermal is reached sooner. However, at higher speeds the glider also sinks faster, requiring the pilot to spend more time circling to regain the altitude. The Mach-Credi speed represents the optimal trade-off between cruising and circling. Most competition pilots use Macready theory to optimize their average speeds, and have the calculations programmed in their flight computers, or use a Macready ring, a rotatable bezel on the glider's variometer to indicate the best speed to fly. The greatest factor in maximizing average speed, however, remains the ability of the pilot to find the strongest lift. 22:56. On cross-country flights on days when strong lift is forecast, pilots fly with water ballast stored in tanks or bags in the wings and fin. The fin tank is used to reduce trim drag by optimizing the center of gravity, which typically would shift forward if water is stored only in the wings ahead of the spar. 49. 513 Ballast enables a sailplane to attain its best lift-to-drag ratio, L/D, at higher speeds but slows its climb rate in thermals, in part because a sailplane with a heavier wing loading cannot circle within a thermal as tightly as one with a lower, unballasted wing loading. But if lift is strong, typically either from thermals or wave, the disadvantage of slower climbs is outweighed by the higher cruising speeds between lift areas. Thus, the pilot can improve the average speed over a course by several percent or achieve longer distances in a given time. 22:63 If lift is weaker than expected, or if an off-field landing is imminent, the pilot can jettison through to ballast by opening the dump valves. 22:64 On days with particularly strong and widespread lift, pilots can attain high average speeds by alternating periods of fast flight with pull-ups, merely slowing down in areas of lift without deviating from the course. This dolphining technique can result in high average speeds because the height lost can be minimized until particularly strong lift is encountered when circling would be most effective. Badges. Swedish A-certificate badge. FAI Diamond Badge achievements in gliding have been marked by the awarding of badges since the 1920s. 51, 52, for the lower badges, such as the first solo flight, national gliding federations set their own criteria. Typically, a bronze badge shows preparation for cross-country flight, including precise landings and witnessed soaring flights. Higher badges follow the standards set down by the Gliding Commission of the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale, FAI. 53. The FAI's sporting code defines the rules for observers and recording devices to validate the claims for badges that are defined by kilometers of distance and meters of altitude gained. 54. The Silver Sea badge was introduced in 1930. 52. Earning the silver badge shows that a glider pilot has achieved an altitude gain of at least 1,000 meters, 3,281 feet, made a 5-hour duration flight, and has flown cross-country for a straight-line distance of at least 50 kilometers, 31 mi. These three attainments are usually, but not invariably, achieved in separate flights. A pilot who has earned the gold badge has achieved an altitude gain of 3,000 meters, 9,843 feet, made a flight of 5 hours duration, and flown cross-country for a straight-line distance of at least 300 kilometers, 186 mi. A pilot who has completed the three parts of the Diamond Badge has flown 300 kilometers, 186 mi. To a predefined goal, has flown 500 kilometers, 311 mi, in un-flight, but not necessarily to a predefined goal, and gained 5,000 meters, 16,000 feet, in height. The FAI also issues a diploma for a flight of 1,000 kilometers, 621 mi, and further diplomas for increments of 250 kilometers, 155 mi. 53. Landing out. If lift is not found during a cross-country flight, for example because of deteriorating weather, the pilot must choose a location to land out. 22. Although inconvenient and often mistaken for emergency landings, landing out, or outlanding, is a routine event in cross-country gliding. A location needs to be identified where the glider can land safely without damaging the glider, the pilot, or property such as crops or livestock. 55. The glider and the pilot, can then be retrieved by road from the outlanding location using a glider and its trailer after a new landing purpose-built trailer. If this is not possible due to an inaccessible location such as a mountain range, the glider may be loaded into its trailer and airlifted by helicopter. 56. In some instances, a tow plane can be summoned to relaunch the aircraft. Use of engines or motors. 25. There may self-launching two-seater glider, although adding to fuel and expense, Some gliders are fitted with small power units and are known as motor gliders. 57. Thighs avoids the inconvenience of landing out. The power units can be internal combustion engines, electrical motors, or retractable jet engines. Retractable propellers are fitted to high-performance ISIL planes, though in another category, called touring motor gliders, non-retractable propellers are used. Some powered gliders are self-launching, which makes the glider independent of a tow plane. However, some gliders have sustainer engines that can prolong flight but are not powerful enough for launching. All power units have to be started at a height that includes a margin that would still allow a safe landing out to be made, if there were a failure to start. 24, 130, 58, in a competition, using the engine ends the soaring flight. Unpowered gliders are lighter and, as they do not need a safety margin for starting the engine, they can safely thermal at lower altitudes in weaker conditions. Consequently, pilots in unpowered gliders may complete competition flights when some powered competitors cannot. 59. Conversely, motor glider pilots can start the engine if conditions will no longer support soaring flight, while unpowered gliders will have to land out, away from the home airfield, requiring retrieval by road using the glider's trailer. Aerobatic competitions. S1 Swift modern aerobatic glider Georgij Kaminsky demonstration flight on the 90th anniversary of the gliding sport of Russia. S1 Swift glider. World and European aerobatic competitions are held regularly. 60. In this type of competition, the pilots fly a program of maneuvers, such as inverted flight, loop, roll, and various combinations. Each maneuver has a rating called K factor. 61. Maximum points are given for the maneuver if it is flown perfectly, otherwise, points are deducted. Efficient maneuvers also enable the whole program to be completed with the height available. The winner is the pilot with the most points. 62. Hazards. Unlike hang gliders and paragliders, gliders surround the pilots with strong structures and have undercarriages to absorb impacts when landing. These features prevent injuries from otherwise minor incidents. 63, 64, but there are some hazards. Although training and safe procedures are central to the ethos of the sport, a few fatal accidents occur every year, almost all caused by pilot error. 64, in particular there is a risk, 65, of mid-air collisions between gliders, because two pilots might choose to fly to the same area of lift and so might collide. To avoid other gliders and general aviation traffic, pilots must comply with the rules of the air and keep a good lookout. They also usually wear parachutes. In several European countries and Australia, the FLAM warning system is used to help avoid mid-air collisions between gliders. 66. A few modern gliders have a ballistic emergency parachute to stabilize the aircraft after a collision. 67. Training and regulation. Ashleacher Ask 13. A typical training glider. In addition to national laws controlling aviation, the sport in many countries is regulated through national gliding associations and through local gliding clubs. Much of the regulation concerns safety and training. Many clubs provide training for new pilots. The student flies with an instructor in a two-seat glider fitted with dual controls. The instructor performs the first launches and landings, typically from the back seat, but otherwise the student manages the controls until the student is deemed to have the skill and the airmanship necessary to fly solo. 68. Simulators are also beginning to be used in training, especially during poor weather. 69. After the first solo flights, glider pilots are required to stay within gliding range of their home airfield. In addition to solo flying, further flights are made with an instructor until the student is capable of taking a glider cross-country and of handling more difficult weather. Cross-country flights are allowed when they have sufficient experience to find sources of lift away from their home airfield, to navigate, and to select and land in a field if necessary. In most countries, pilots must take a written